Hello there, good people. Welcome to It's a Shaw Thing. I'm your host, Rob Shaw, here to talk some fantasy football. Now, usually we like to talk about the running backs early in fantasy football drafts, but we're going to talk about some quarterbacks. Last year, everyone got all excited about Tom Brady. Obviously, he didn't make it past one game this season because of injuries, but a couple of guys did, and there were some fancy numbers put up, including one guy reaching over 5,000 passing yards. And on the rankings, that's where we start. The number one quarterback in all of fantasy football, Drew Brees. What a year he had. 5,069 passing yards, throwing 34 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. The team kind of struggled a little bit in the middle of the season, but Brees continued to pump up big fantasy numbers. He is the number one quarterback. Number two, another team that did not make the playoffs, but still allowed a lot of fantasy teams to make the playoffs, Jay Cutler of the Denver Broncos. 4,526 yards, 25 touchdowns, 18 interceptions, a bit high, but this guy actually moved his feet a bit as well. 200 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Jay Cutler, the number two fantasy quarterback. As far as number three, a little bit of a surprise here. Not Brett Favre, but his replacement, Aaron Rodgers. Favre didn't even make the list. Rodgers certainly did. 28 touchdowns, just 13 interceptions. That's 9 fewer than Favre, by the way. He also moved the ball on the ground as well. 207 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground. Aaron Rodgers, a fantastic season. Him and Jennings formed a nice rapport. Number four, we talk a lot about LT being a disappointment this year. The Chargers still making the playoffs because of their QB. 34 touchdowns passed by Phillip Rivers, over 4,000 passing yards, just 11 interceptions. Think of that. 3 touchdowns per interception. That is a nice ratio. Phillip Rivers, a breakout year for him. Number five, we saw it coming. As long as he starts, he puts up numbers. Kurt Warner of the Arizona Cardinals. He might be 30-something years old, approaching 40, but he still threw for over 4,500 passing yards. He reached the big 3-0 when it came to touchdowns, 14 interceptions, a couple too many fumbles, and a very disappointing finish to the season. But Kurt Warner did still rank in the top 5 of fantasy quarterbacks. Number 6, reliable, Peyton Manning, over 4,000 passing yards, 27 touchdowns, just 12 interceptions, and that one rushing touchdown as well. Peyton Manning is simply one of those guys who's going to give you something every single week. You can't say that about all the quarterbacks, but Mr. Consistency was that this season. Number 7, huge surprise, Matt Castle. Even after that ugly start to the season when people wondered, are we going to see Kevin O'Sullivan or someone else out there? No, Matt Castle ended up keeping the job because of 21 passing touchdowns, just 11 interceptions, and also much more mobile than Tom Brady, 270 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns as well. Matt Castle, number 7 quarterback in fantasy circles. Number 8, Donovan McNabb. The guy got benched for a game but still put up good numbers, 3,916 passing yards, 23 passing touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He had a couple of rushing touchdowns as well. A solid year. Not spectacular, but solid. And speaking of solid but not spectacular, I love this guy. Chad Pennington of the Miami Dolphins, formerly of the New York Jets. They could have used him this year. 3,653 passing yards, 19 touchdowns, just 7 interceptions, even a rushing touchdown. Solid year for him. And finally, rounding out the top 10, David Garrard of the Jacksonville Jaguars. A disappointing year for them, but at least him and Matt Jones had something going on. 3,620 passing yards was solid. 15 touchdowns, but the bigger thing for him, what he did on the ground, 322 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. Solid season from him, even though the team did struggle. That's a look at your top 10 when it comes to fantasy quarterbacks.
Think you can complete the drive? Play today and get an automatic entry to win daily prizes, 2 tickets to the big game, and a brand new car. Start your drive today at opensports.com.